Three, two, one. This is Nick,
And this is Amanda.
and this is the Performance Plate Podcast, where we give you bite-sized bits of information based on nutrition and exercise science to improve your overall performance. And on this episode today, we have a two-parter. So make sure you subscribe so you get alerted when part two releases the next week after. And it's about how to live a positive life. So the reason why we broke this down into two parts is because the first one, we're going to talk about how a lot of times we tend to gravitate towards negative things in our life. Why? We have no idea. We're going to kind of discuss our theories, our thoughts about it. But if you notice in life, you tend to hold on to the small little things that go wrong. And then part two, we'll talk about ways to improve that and ways we think that, and we've seen in ourselves and our clients of how to improve more positivity in your life.
Yeah, I'm excited. I like this conversation a
I
lot.
know it's going to be a lot of fun. Uh,
Yeah. So why do you think that we tend to gravitate towards negativity?
So, and you saw this when I put it in our wonderful doc, is there's no research behind it because that's what I love. But I don't know if it's a survival thing. Like,
Mm.
as advanced humans we are so primitive at the same time.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
crazy.
don't know if it's always our fear of worried about survival. So
Right.
like, maybe it's the fact that like we're always into like, oh, if we harp on the negative, we can improve the negative so that our chances for survival are higher. Like if X, Y, and Z happen, like, hey, if I perform my bad trait better, my chances of survival are higher. Maybe that's it. The other one
Yeah. I
is
also feel like it's a way to prime ourselves for the worst possible outcome.
that too.
Like if we can just prepare ourselves and just
Yes.
like live it before it even happens, and
Yes.
maybe when it actually happens, it won't hurt as bad.
Well, was that saying? Prepare for the worst. Well, no. Expect the worst, prepare for the best. I forget the set. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
Okay. So
Maybe it's prepare for the worst, expect the best.
I think so, or something like that. What
Uh-huh.
it's something similar, but it goes along that thought process you're having of, yeah, maybe we look towards the negative more because we're like, okay, well, you know, if like we look towards like, oh, I think this relationship's not going to work out. Well, so when it doesn't work out, you're like, see, I already knew. It
Yeah,
protects yourself.
but did it not work out because you had that recurring thought and you
Yes.
pretty much made that come to life?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. It's such a
It,
weird, like
it's a
crazy thing
wild
to
one.
think about. And I think too, like you can live life one of two ways. You can live it constantly in the negative space, or you
Mhm.
can live it in a positive way. Either
Yeah.
way, like life still carries on and things still happen, and like you're still gonna you might still have, I always say you could have the same exact experience, but the way that you interpret it and live it can be totally different than the way
Yes.
that someone else does.
Yes. It's so true. You can like
And
you and 15 people could be in a crowd of whatever at a concert and something can happen, whether it's good or bad, and your interpretation of it, if it's a good thing, will be like, oh my gosh, like everyone was dancing, having a great time, blah blah. And then the person next to you will be like, I got bumped 7 times, so it wasn't that great of a concert. Like,
uh-huh.
hold on. You weren't having
Yeah.
fun? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the
That's a good,
interpretation
yeah.
is so different, so wild to everybody too.
Yeah. And I think the reason that we are so intrigued by this conversation is because of how it influences the next moment
Mhm.
and then
Yes.
ultimately our life.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about this before we got on here. Nick was upset because he didn't hit.
Yes.
He had set a goal in the gym that he hit, and then he tried for something larger and didn't hit that. So then he sat in his shit all day long and
Yep.
was like,
And I even texted my friends about it. I texted Leanne and I texted my friend Corinne and the owner of Ray, the owner of the War Room. I was just like, I'm upset, and I'm upset. And they're like, but you hit your goal, and I was like, I know, but I wanted this. I wanted 405. I
yeah,
wanted it, and they're like,
it wasn't good enough. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we prime that negative aspect, and then you just sit in your shit all day, and you're like, ah.
Yeah.
Or the 10 minutes of traffic you sat in that made you late for work. You shit in that all day. Like you're like, ah, damn, I said shit
Yeah.
in that all
I
day.
just
Sit
had a
in that all
thought
day.
too. Like, I wonder if sometimes the negativity comes from the fact we think we're going to find happiness in the next thing.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, why are we never happy with what's right in front of us? And I
Yeah.
think that kind of segues into what we're going to talk about in the next episode of
Hmm.
like how to start living a more positive life. But I wonder if that's part of it.
Yeah.
I wonder if we put ourselves in our own negativity cycles because we are constantly searching for what's going to give us happiness when we're the
Yes.
only ones that can
Truly.
create and choose that happiness in
Yes.
this moment. Like you can choose it right now.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
true. You like yesterday, I could have been happy with my 375 for a double, but no, I was like, no, I want 405.
Yeah, I see
Um,
this all the time with people too, like even with coaching, and they're
yeah.
like, I had such a great week. Like I felt so good. And then I stepped on that damn scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, can we just go back to the great week?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like that's okay, and that's the momentum that keeps you going. And that's what we were talking about before, is this like loser's mentality. So it's not about if you have an athlete that has a bad play,
Yeah.
it's not about so much critiquing that play. It's actually about how does that play
Mhm.
influence the next three plays?
Yes.
Is the athlete letting it take them down and
Yeah.
letting it impact the next three plays negatively?
Hmm.
Or are they able to bounce back from that, out of sight, out of mind? Let's move on. Let's
Yes.
regroup and let's get back into the game.
And I have a great story for that as well
Mhm.
because the Ray, the owner of the War Room, his son was at a baseball game, and he brings this up all the time. When he missed a play, he missed a play. Something happened, down in the dumps about it. Got in his head, and then the next play, since he was like down in the dumps about that play, he wasn't in his position that he's supposed to be because he's a baseball player and shortstop, and you have to be in ready stance when the as soon as that pitch is thrown, you got to be ready in stance. And he says to and he ball comes right to him. He's not in ready stance. He misses the play. They end up scoring a run in the game and stuff like that. And Ray says he calls his son over. He's like, "Hey, listen, I don't care. You didn't mess that up because of skill, and I don't care if you don't mess that up because of skill, because that's one thing. But you missed that play because of an attitude, because you were down in the dumps because you missed the play before, and
And
now
that's even more frustrating than missing it because of a skill.
exactly. And so he
Yeah.
was like, I'm okay with you missing because of a skill. But if it's because of your attitude, because you held on to that other thing, he's like, you got to put that out of your head. That was one play. The next play, you have to start over again, like nothing happened, because now your team's down and you got to come back.
Hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
like, boom, like that's,
Sometimes we have these conversations and I'm just like, whoa, like something else that happened in the past makes sense.
yes,
I,
yeah,
I was just thinking about, I know, I feel like I probably brought this up on another episode because it was just a big thing that happened to me in January. I had an issue with fraud.
mm,
And I remember talking to a mentor who's been so awesome. And she said to me, don't let the ripple become a wave.
yes,
That's
yeah,
all I'm gonna say to you. And I didn't
yeah,
like I knew what she meant by it at the time, but like
mhm,
you when we have conversations like this, you just realize how much like if I had truly let that affect me and totally take me down,
yeah,
my decisions in business, my decisions in life, like if I let that affect all of those things,
yes,
I would be in a much not like drastically different place right now, but
yeah,
like still, I don't know. I would we be that was around the time we were starting to film the podcast.
yes, it was.
At the
I
time, I was
remember.
like, maybe I just need to put it off for another 3 months. But like now here we are filming episode what, like 8 or 9.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's, it just
yeah.
makes you think.
It's and I remember that too. I remember you going through that and I was like, "Hey, you good?" And you're like, "Just give me a few days." And I was like, "Okay." Because that was it. Like you need a little bit of time to
Yeah.
kind of but if you let that like yes, if you let that ripple turn into a wave, that
Mhm.
wave can cause destruction in your life and we don't want that. And then yeah, who knows
And
if we just push this off another week, another month or whatever it is. We wouldn't
mhm,
be this far, you know?
right. And every ripple is an opportunity to get better at doing that. So
Yes.
that when a wave does come,
Mhm.
when there's no little ripple and it's a massive wave, honestly, that fraud thing felt like a massive wave.
I'm sure
But
it did. I'm
but
sure.
when those waves do come, then you're able to pull yourself out of that quicker. And
Yes.
it's like I was even talking about anxiety with a
Mhm.
client the other
Yeah.
day. Anxiety is not a bad thing. We label it as a bad thing, and
Yeah.
then it becomes that we have this fear of anxiety now.
Mhm.
We have this fear of bad things happening.
Yes. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not bad unless you like make them bad. It's the emotion that we attach to it. It's just
Yeah.
they're happening no matter what, right? Ups and
Yes.
downs of life happen no matter what. So it's about embracing them.
Mhm.
It's about overcoming them
Yep.
and moving forward. Like it's just we have to start seeing it as just like a natural,
Yeah.
like the natural ebb and flow of life.
Yes.
And we can let that be a really beautiful thing.
Hmm.
We don't always have to be fighting it and we don't have to be fearful of it.
Yeah. Yes. Like you said, the life is happening no matter what. And it's
Mhm.
true. Life is happening no matter what. You can try your best to make sense of the world around you,
Good
but
luck.
there's yeah, there's like what 1.3 billion people in the world, and
Yeah.
you, every action they do is an action of their own. So like you can't make sense that okay, so this guy decided to pull out of the car at that time and ran the red light at that time. So if I was 4 minutes earlier, I probably wouldn't have gotten rear-ended, so I didn't have to slide. It was like what?
Yeah.
Like you can try to do that, but no, there's too much chaos to make sense of that. Where what so we tend to we tend to go into that negative, but those ripples don't have to go crazy. And how much we focus on that negative can really, really turn into bad things. Like you said, a wave.
Yeah,
Um,
and then we essentially manifest the bad then, right? Or
exactly.
we can manifest the good. And I think that's what
Yes.
we're going to talk about in the next episode of like the simplest daily practice you can do to start
Mhm.
overcoming your own negativity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's simple things to own negativities. But to this breakdown of why maybe like we get into the negative thoughts as well, one more thing we wanted to talk about is our need for belonging. So
Mm,
humans are communal people. As much as people say I'm a loner, at the same time, people that are loners, because I would say I kind of am a loner sometimes. I like my peace, I like my quiet, but I also need that social interaction.
mhm.
Luckily, I get a lot of that through my job and what I do for a career because I get a lot of social action. So I'm really not a loner at all. I just like to say I am, but it's a blatant lie. Because of how so like I'm with people all day long. So socially, I am getting my social aspect of this. But our needs for belonging, and I recently when I was in Denver, we had a guy talk, and that's one of our primal needs is belonging because we are communal people.
Love this conversation too. Yeah.
Yes. And so
Been some
maybe
really cool studies on this.
that's what he was talking about. So he was talking about studies about that of how a lot of people want all they want to feel is belonging. They want to feel appreciated. They want to be a part of something. And what that can go to though is sometimes our brain wires us towards a negative thought more because we think that people think that about us, so we won't belong. So if
Mm.
you know what I mean? So if you have like a bad moment where I'm sure you went home after you hung out with somebody, you were on a date or whatever it was, and you're like, ah, crap, I probably shouldn't have brought up the fact that,
Or
like,
you like rethink something you said
yes.
and
And then
like, why would I say that?
right,
Like,
oh my gosh,
yeah,
they probably hate me. They're never going to want to talk
yeah.
to me again. And that's
Uh-huh.
going towards the negative as opposed to you literally probably had the greatest time. Hopefully,
Yeah,
it's
and
not
that's the one
time.
thing you can think about. Like, I'll physically like slap my hand in my forehead sometimes because I'm like, I cannot believe I said that, or like
Yes.
I'll like, cringe, or like just yell something out loud because I'm like, oh my God, Amanda, why would you have said that?
Yes. Yeah. And it's one where like some people are very good at just whatevering it, but other people they think about it, and that's just another form of you going down a negative thought process. Like you could have had the best time of your life, but then you ruined it. Not ruined it. That's a terrible way to say it, but you think you ruined it because you said, "Oh, one time in high school I had athlete's foot." Why would you bring that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're like, why would I bring that up? But you were talking about high school sports and weird things that happen, and maybe that was where the conversation went. But that's all
And
you.
in context, it was probably fine. It probably wasn't
Yes,
like you just shouted out, "Hey, I have athlete's
exactly.
foot in high school."
It wasn't just ripped out of nowhere. Like, oh, guess what? Like, I have this disease. Like, what? Hold on, wait a second. Like, So
Yeah.
we tend to think these thoughts in our head, and a lot of it is just us. We cannot us going towards that because we want to be belong. So it's like, crap. What if the fact that I have had, not that you had athletes, but I don't know why I thought of this, but to be honest with you,
Did you have
um,
it? Do you want to unpack this?
oh, I have had it multiple times, but that's the point. um, but that's not the reason why somebody won't like we pick out the negative things we say about ourselves or in conversation because we think someone's going to pick on that and be like, you know what? I'm sorry, this is a
Yeah.
deal breaker. I can't be friends with you because of you had athlete's foot one day. Like, what? No, no one's going to say that. Come on. But we
Yeah,
tend to
I
do that.
never thought about that. Like a lot of our negativity uh, is again for that, like it's a way to protect ourselves because we're like, why
Yeah.
would I have said that? Like, how can I say it better next time so that like I
Yes.
can keep people around, I can keep friends around.
Yeah.
When
And
you were talking, oh God,
no, go ahead.
I was no, I was because I'm kind of gonna change the gear a little bit, and I want to hear what you're gonna say.
I was just going to say, like, what you said of, could I say that better? You hear me talk, if you heard me talk with patients before or people in front of me, um, the terminology, I say something, and even just now I said ruined, and then I'll correct myself right afterwards because I'm getting better at realizing that maybe that's not the term I need to use right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk fast and I don't let my brain process. So I need to slow down. And that's what I'm working on. Slow
Mm-hmm.
down to allow myself to process, especially when I'm working with patients. I have learned to take more pauses so I don't the whole time when I go home at night and be like, "Ugh, I told that one patient something, they're going to be angry. I shouldn't have said that." It doesn't
Uh-huh.
even faze them, to be honest. That's what I
Yes.
was going to say is like we pick out things, but like you can start realizing like, okay, slow down. It probably didn't even phase them. Don't worry about it. But it's our
Yeah.
own internal dialogue that messes us up.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Yeah. And then I think when you're stuck in that negative space, it's really hard to like be yourself and like calm down because you're so focused on what you did that was
Mhm.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
Embarrassing.
Yes.
I say that in quotes because it probably really wasn't, but and we all do embarrassing stuff. So
Of course.
it really is no difference.
Of
But
course.
yeah, and but I think it's cool, like even the relationship aspect of it. I when you said that, I thought of that lifelong study that they've done on people. It
Mhm.
was on one of Jay Shetty's podcasts. He had a psychologist on there that has been a lead researcher in this study that has gone on for like 90 years. Like it's the longest study they've ever had. And
Wow.
they've had original subjects, and then now they also have like their children and their grandchildren participating in it, and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
looking at happiness and what like contributes to a healthy life.
Mhm.
And one of the most important things was relationships. So it's just interesting that a lot of this negativity can also stem from a place that is
Mhm.
so important and so can be so positive for
Yes.
us. Like,
Yes.
it can be
Yes.
like, I think I mean, really, like if you think about the greatest stressors in your life, it's usually in relationships.
Mhm.
Like, but then the most least stressful things, the most positive things in your life are also relationships. You have like
Yes.
this polar opposite, and
Yes.
sometimes it's the same person.
Yes, exactly. It is the same person
Yeah.
most times is the same person.
Uh-huh.
Um, and a lot of it I've learned over time, a lot of it is we break down that communication has to be more there, not to go down this communication rabbit hole with that.
Yeah. Might have to be another
Communicate
podcast.
Yes, the communication aspect of in relationships is something that can be so important of just saying like because you may feel a certain way, so you may just have to voice that opinion. And then because you can just and then it's the other person coming back to you and say, I did not think that. We'll go back to our example of the conversation you had on a date and you didn't whatever. And if you can't get it out of your head and be like, hey, listen, sorry, like, I hope that was okay that I said that. And the person's like, yeah, no worries. That calms you down. Now,
Yeah.
eventually, that'll start building up in your brain of like, no, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And like I said, some people are already good at that, but other people need practice at that. And that's
Yeah.
one way to help us understand that we lead towards more negative, but a lot of our negative thoughts are in our own head, and our thoughts, how people perceive us, are in our own.
Thoughts are not facts.
That's true. It's true.
Yes.
Yes, they're not. There's no fact behind the thought that you had that you're insane. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. And
So,
you'll never ever be able to control how other people see you either.
no,
You can only do your best. Like
exactly.
as long as you're not hurting anyone or being offensive,
Yes.
like,
Live your life,
and if you
man.
feel like you were, then you just communicate about it. Hey, I'm
Yeah.
really sorry. I've been thinking about this. Like, I hope that I didn't, and
Yeah.
that's
I
the person's
apologize
gonna
for that.
value that. Yeah,
Yeah. And then
exactly.
if they
Yeah.
can't, whatever it is.
Honestly, I think communication would be a cool podcast because I talk about this with clients too. It's a
Mhm.
really big part of self-care,
It
being
is.
able
Oh
to
yeah.
communicate. Yeah.
Yes.
And
We should do that one at some point
okay,
because
we'll write it
I
down.
yeah,
All right.
I do that too. I talk about patients and communication. To me, how to communicate how they feel.
Yes, exactly. Even with your health and your doctor, like how many
Mhm.
times have, okay, we could definitely talk about this. We're gonna have to end this now because
Yeah,
I
because but anyway, that is a good point because we're wrapping this up anyway about how we get into the negative mindset so easily. Um, because we do. And that's something to think about. Like, hey, you've seen this saying, you've heard it. Did you really have a bad day or did you have a bad 5 minutes? Let's think
hmm
about that. I had a bad 35, maybe 1 minute yesterday of trying to pull 405 and it just wasn't getting off the floor. And that corrupted from 1 p.m. till 10 p.m. Well, actually, no, I say 10 p.m., but I fell asleep because I was exhausted after trying it so many times at 8 p.m. last night. But it bothered me all day. And obviously, it's still bothering me because I brought it up again to you today. So, point being is that 1 minute has taken up about 20 hours of my life.
Yeah.
And we don't need to do that. We don't need to be so negative all the time. There's
Mm.
ways to help that. We're going to get into that in the next episode. It's just this episode would have been like 2 hours long if we did that, if we brought it up into one. So we had to break it up for that reason. So
Yes.
definitely tune in next week for the next episode of how to help yourself with a more positive life. If you liked this episode, please rate us on Spotify. Please share it. Please tell your friends, do all that fun stuff because we want to help as many people get in touch with the Performance Plate podcast because we love helping you all. So thank you so much, Amanda. And I can't wait for next week to talk about how to improve life and create a more positive life.
Thanks, Nick.